I am of the Tlingit Nation, and Ilani is a Hawaiian name. It means heavenly. My Tlingit name is Sion Chin, which means strong right arm. I'm the board chair of the Nakani Native Program, and this is our end of the year review as of today. Go ahead, next slide. And Jonathan Betzel, if you'll introduce yourself, and he's assisting and will be helping along.
Great. I'm Jonathan Betzel, he, him, Ashkenazi Jewish, and I am the treasurer and secretary of the Nakani board.
And you are recording this, correct?
Yes, correct. It's being
Okay.
recorded.
Okay, great. Excellent. Next slide.
You have control of the slides.
Remember? Oh, okay. That's right. Okay. Just briefly, I want to share a little bit about the Nakani Native Program. We formed a 501c3 back in 2017. We actually started before that, but that's when we became a nonprofit officially in the state of Washington. We're led by Native people, and we advocate for equal rights, equity, social justice. And Nakani is actually a Tlingit word that means go between. And we fully support Black Lives Matter. And we have our statement on our website. All of our presentations that we've been making with a variety of presenters are also on our website, which is www.nakani.org. Some of the work that we do is we do treaty rights across the nation in Washington state tribes. There are 29 federally recognized tribes. We also partner with a number of urban Indian organizations. We support and teach and engage with our traditional foods like salmon, plants, medicine, and ceremony. And we know that it's very important to access land, clean water, and clean air. And one of the things that I do is I created a workshop or a curriculum called Building Bridges Between Cultures, and I modify it based on who the audience is and how much time that I have. And it had to be completely redesigned for Zoom as opposed to doing workshops in person. We provide advocacy, and we monitor struggles and inform the public on how they can support Indigenous people's rights and interests. We also support the Tribal Canoe Journey 2020 and 2021. It's been canceled. This year, due to COVID-19, we actually provide food delivery to, and we've partnered with 13 agencies, and that lists just a few: United Indians of All Tribes Foundation, Chief Seattle Club at the Eagle Village, and Duwamish and UNEA, Urban Native Youth Program, and West African Community. We rented a refrigerated truck, 26-foot long, weekly on the average. And on the average, we delivered about 2,500 pounds per week. And then within the total program, we served 5,000 people, about 70 tons of food. And it was fresh fruits, vegetables, some meat, some dairy, depending on the audience. And our attempt was to do delivery Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, depending on the amount of money we had available. Some of the neighborhoods we served was Seattle, White Center, and Des Moines, with 2 subcontractors and 1 executive director. This gives you a list of the boards and community engagement that I'm very involved with. Indigenous Nations Committee, with Healthier Here. I'm a member of the Equity Response Team of Public Health, the Metro Mobility Equity Cabinet, and the Open Space Equity Cabinet of King County. And I represent the Duwamish tribe per their request on the Transportation Equity Work Group with the Seattle Department of Transportation with the City of Seattle. And we are in partnership with Transportation Choices Coalition. And I also gave a racial toolkit and advocacy presentation for Race Forward at the national conference. Some of the things that we've done is distribute traditional plant foods and medicines to natives and non-natives, procured cloth face masks from tribal people from the Macaw and Warm Springs. We donated 700 cloth masks and 80 N95 masks. We did 2 Zoom presentations on cooking traditional foods and traditional medicines and first foods. And we offer a wonderful loving kindness meditation 5 times a week, 4 mornings and 1 evening a week. And that's my traditional button blanket on the lower right-hand corner. This has to do with our Stand Up to Oil grant that we received. All of these resources and videos are on YouTube and are linked directly to our NakaniAnnualReport2020 website. We had Lindsay Crowfoot give a wonderful presentation May 20th on Pacific Northwest traditional foods and medicines. Next, we had Valerie Segrist give a Stand Up to Oil traditional foods and medicines restoring our bodies in May. We did a Stand Up to Oil connecting the dots with Derek Hoshiko on June 19th. We had Indigenous Environmental Justice with Dina Gilio Whitaker. She's a professor and wonderful author. And she did her presentation on September 18th. And then I'm doing today, right now, the end of the year presentation with an overview of Stand Up to Oil, the impact of historical, environmental, and cultural programs, our activities, and the partnerships that we have formed over the years. And this is the beginning of Lindsay Crowfoot's presentation. As you know, I won't be giving her presentation. I'm just sharing with you what she shared and just some highlights of her presentation. And you can see her full presentation, the video itself, on our website. This gives you a little idea of what it used to be like pre-contact, living with the land since time immemorial, living off the land to survive, hunting, fishing, gathering, and agriculture. And the Lushootseed people spoke about time of year based on food. And later we show in the presentation the connection to food and seasons. Okay, it's not moving forward. Okay, I'm hitting press forward. It's not going, Jonathan. Okay, here we go. Here's the, shows you the Lushootseed Calendar. And this shows you the different months. January is when your stomach sticks to your backbone. February is the windy time with many hard winds. March is when the frogs sing. April, when you hear the voices of the migrating cranes and swans. May is a time to dig roots. June, salmonberry season. July, blackberry. August, salal. September, return of the coho. October, leaves are falling. November, when the chum return. December, time to sheath the paddles. And this shows you the gathering from earth, river, and sea. And the picture on the right is the winter camp at the Flathead Lake. And so the movement of the people was based on the food supply in the winter, the spring, the summer, and fall. Tribes travel between temporary and established camps. And if you notice in Everett is Snohomish area, Healbulb, Port Madison, Suquamish, mouth of the river, Okino River on Strait of Juan de Fuca, and the Lummi area. And then each camp provided different resources, and it was vital to keeping people healthy, both physically and spiritually. And the routes between the camps provided food and water sources and a way of life. So these are how we honor these gifts from Mother Earth. The gifts are land, water, animals, and plants. We respect and treasure, never to be wasteful, and utilize them for ceremonies, protocols, songs, dances, stories, and arts. This gives you a little idea of the importance of and the diversity of harvesting foods in the Pacific Sound traditional foods area. There was a project that she outlined of the work that she did with Hank Gobin of the Tulalip tribes and others. And they evaluated 31 dig sites, and 170 species of plants and animals were identified. This gives you a brief outline of the Stevens Treaties. 5 treaties removed most Washington tribes onto reservations. The federal executive orders, where tribes were forced to sign treaties and forced onto reservations. And tribal leaders fought to maintain certain rights on lands outside of reservations. And we attempted to retain the sovereign right to fish, hunt, gather at usual and accustomed stations in exchange for lands outside reservations. However, the promises were quickly broken. This shows you a map of the land in Washington state. It's all Indian land. On the top, it shows you most of the land. And on the bottom, it shows you from the U.S. Census Office map from 1890 on the top, and then on the bottom, it shows you the current lands and reservations. This does not include all of the tribes because there are many tribes that are not federally recognized.
It didn't show Makah tribe either, so even though we were there,
Right.
I guess they missed us. So
Right, and it's on this screen here, Makah Reservation on the left.
right, it's just the old map they.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then life on the reservation changed everything for Native American people. There was competition for natural resources, and it also led to infringement on Indian rights. And despite promises, Indians were confined to the reservation. You could be shot at or in later years arrested if off the reservation without permission of the Indian agent. So this was a complete disruption of our traditional life way. And there was not enough food on reservations to keep community healthy. We had to work for money, so we didn't have time to hunt and gather. This shows you the oppression and assimilation reshaped by the Indian diet. Our traditional lifeways were quickly banned, and we were forced to be assimilated into the Western lifestyle. Children were taken away from reservations to attend boarding schools to civilize them. And even in Alaska, where we don't have reservations, my father was still sent to a boarding school. It didn't matter if they had a reservation or not. And the children became adapted to Western diet, school foods, and commodity foods, which are very unhealthy. This shows you the health ramifications of being separated from traditional foods, and lifeways could be seen almost immediately. So you see the picture of the modern food versus traditional food. The modern food on the right shows you the pop and pizza, as opposed to healthy salmon and plants and fruits. And it affected our Native peoples with obesity, diabetes, and heart disease, and mental health, and substance abuse disorder, and increasing rates of suicide. This shows you as the state fishing departments began to regulate fishing, Native American sovereign right to fish were denied. Yet many natives were assaulted, arrested, and fined for fishing within their own usual and custom fishing areas. And there were conflicts between white fishermen and Native American fishermen, including Alaska Native fishermen, and still persists to this day, even up in Canada. And then this talks a little bit about how the Pacific Northwest fish wars were 1960s and 70s would still affect us today. This is part of the sovereign rights movement. The United States versus Washington. Federal government sues state of Washington to have treaties and other agreements honored. The state tried to limit Native American fishing. And then the famous Judge George Hugo Bolt upheld the treaties in 1974, which ruled the treaty rights guaranteed 50% of fishing take to Indians and opened a path to restoring food sovereignty. Since salmon is our traditional food that we fight for, and everything is connected to our salmon, the water, the trees, the air, and our bodies and our health. This gives you how important access is everything. Exercising our rights and practice to traditional food and sovereignty, hunting, fishing, gathering, and also providing economic security for our people. Commercial fishing, aquaculture, fish hatcheries, forestry, and game management. So this is what we're trying to do today, is taking back control and ensuring our food sovereignty and protecting our tribe's right to protect 50% of the allowable take. And there's still issues with land access and ecosystem protection and restoration. Some of the things that helped were to set and regulate both commercial and recreational harvests. Some barriers to traditional foods and medicines. We continue to fight for the right to access to our traditional foods. And as you may know, that due to the Indian Removal Act, 70% of our people actually live in urban settings and not on reservations. So we also have the loss of land, destruction of ecosystem, and toxins, and colonization. And part of the colonization being removed from our traditional lifeways, it disrupted our seasonal travel and gathering. It removed us from ecosystem structure and function. And we were forced to transition from hunter-gatherer to wage workers. And it also resulted in a lot of loss of traditional ecological knowledge, and especially during that boarding school era. We were fed colonized diet, became accustomed to that. And those norms were passed down to subsequent generations. Part of the urbanization is we had to seek employment in the cities. Again, that's part of the Indian Removal Act and other policies. And the policies were set to further separate Native peoples from our culture and our lands. And the 2010 census, the percentage of urban Native people had grown to 71%. And few opportunities to practice our food sovereignty outside of state regulations. And if I were to try to harvest, there's no place within Seattle I can actually go harvest except for one place in the city. And then the loss of land was really dramatic based on the legislation and Indian policy. The General Allotment Act of 1887 broke the integrity of the reservation system, resulting in checkerboard land holdings. So there are a lot of non-natives living on reservation land. The ecosystem destruction further resulted in widespread destruction of the Pacific Northwest. The Western practices are far different from Native practices, where the land is deforested, the wetlands are drained, the dike estuaries, they're diked estuaries, streams or rivers were straightened, installed bulkheads on shorelines, and many other practices. This gives you some idea of also the toxins in the environment. The urban runoff increases nutrients, pharmaceuticals, sediments, and streams, heavy metals, pesticides, and herbicides, and how it's so unhealthy. These things are so unhealthy to plants, animals, people, and it pollutes the water.
And just quickly, that increasing nutrients sounds like it's a good thing, but what it causes is an overgrowth of plant growth in the water. When those plants die, the organisms that consume them also take up all the oxygen in the water, so the fish can no longer live there. It creates what's called a dead zone.
Thank you. This shows you the fossil fuel economy and climate change. And you can see the impact on the right from 1900 to 2010. And since 1970, the CO2 emissions have increased about 90%, with emissions from fossil fuel combustion and industrial processes contributing about 78% of total greenhouse gas emissions, which increased from 1970 to 2011. And agriculture, deforestation, and other land use changes have been the second largest contributors. So it's pretty dramatic, and it's still happening. So this deals with the gases have always been present in our atmosphere. Human influences have increased the amount drastically over the last century. And the fossil fuel economy is the transportation industry, electricity generation. It also increases in the heat trapping molecules in the atmosphere. So temperatures rising, loss of glaciers, sea level rising, and more severe weather events. The fossil fuel economy and the climate change are directly linked. It threatens the stability of health of the natural resources, support food sovereignty. Plant and animal species of the Pacific Northwest evolved over time with regional climate. But because of climate change, many species not able to adapt to the rapid changes in temperature and precipitation. Acid rain and acidification of oceans damages traditional plant foods and creates unhealthy conditions for sea life. And then, of course, our animals and plant relatives have faced colonization too, with taming of the wilds, introduction of exotic species that are destructive and or outcompete for resources, the introduction of pathogens that native species have no defense to, reduce ranges due to land loss, ecosystem destruction, and toxins in the environment. And so we support food upholding its right to practice culture. And then this gives you an idea of how to honor traditional foods and medicines, treating the land and all its inhabitants as gifts, harvest during appropriate season, never take more than you will use, harvest in a sustainable, ethical way. These are some beautiful pictures of the harvesting, all the work that she's done with her family and herself, and she teaches at Northwest Indian College up in Tulalip. She gave some, just a brief outline. Devil's Club is one of the flowers or one of the plants that we use for our medicine. And this map on the left shows you where some of the areas where it comes from. It's a powerful medicine. It helps treat insulin-resistant type 2 diabetes. It helps mitigate stress on the body. Stinging nettle is another wonderful medicine. Its medicinal uses are vitamin C, silica, calcium, potassium, and iron. And internally, it's a blood builder and strengthens lungs, increases breast milk production, nourishes kidney, helps regulate fluid balance, muscle contractions, and nerve signals. And this is another good reason why to drink nettle tea for, especially during COVID-19. And externally, it helps pain and inflammation, nerve pain. It strengthens our hair and our nails. And on the left, you'll see these are her medicines that she prepared and which we're distributing. This is shows you Salal, a very beautiful picture of Salal, and also the areas that it grows. And it's an evergreen shrub. It can grow up to 6 feet tall in the shade. And it's plentiful and important berries for coastal people. And these edible berries and leaves are staple to our native diet along the coast. Willow bark also acts like an aspirin. It's good for pain, headaches, muscle, menstrual cramps, osteoporosis, mouth sores, etc., gout, and much more. Also helps reduce fever. And it's been used as a traditional medicine all over the world. This is an example of how to make or prepare an herb infusion and how to make the salve. And she goes into detail. She actually does a demonstration right on the during the video, which is on our website, www.nakani.org. And she did a great job. And then she gives instructions on how to infuse the tea, how to prepare them, and utilize them. This is the end of Lindsay's, she's an Indigenous educator, and that's her contact information. And she's local. We tried to get our presenters as local as possible. This is some of her resources. This is also on her video. And it gives you information on where the information came from. This is the beginning of Derek Hoshiko's presentation he did in June called Connecting the Dots, Climate Change, COVID-19 Pandemic, and Oil Spills, showing how they're all related. So he talked about how systems, the colonialism of patriarchy, capitalism, white supremacy, and industrial complex, and also those systems, how they are oppressing people. And the systems are also oppressing the earth, Mother Earth, which affect global warming, climate change, species extinction, pollution, fossil fuel extraction, etc. Landfills, mineral extraction. There's a wonderful picture of Derek on the Greenpeace Pacific Coast ship tour in 2018. This is our beautiful Mother Earth. This is the only Earth that is in our solar system for us. There is no planet B. So we got to take care of Mother Earth and stop using fossil fuels as much as possible. This shows you the Chehalis River flood of 2007. So the impact of global warming is a big one. Here's another one, Kema Beach State Park in 2012. And Jonathan, you want to share anything about this one?
Sure. Here you see some oyster harvesters. Shellfish farming is a multi-million-dollar industry in Washington State. So when we show this slide, we're always careful to point this out to people who are worried that protecting the environment might not be so great for the economy. The fact is, most of our industries depend heavily on the environment for their mere being. So that's why we include this photo.
Thank you. This shows you a diagram that Derek, he's a scientist, so he's did an excellent job in describing what this is. We wanted to share this with you to show how the temperature dramatically impacts Mother Earth, the whole ecosystem, the water, the land, the people, everything.
Yes, and the point of this slide is the two paths that we could be taking. We either could go into Earth system stewardship and have a stabilized Earth, or we could continue with emissions and biosphere degradation. We cross a planetary threshold and descend into hothouse Earth, where we would be unable to live.
Great. This shows that humans have actually killed off 2/3 of all the wildlife in just 50 years. I really like this quote: "For the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us temporarily beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change." From Audre Lorde. And then this is one of my favorite persons, Billy Frank Jr., who died, but who's a very key activist in our Native community here in the whole Pacific Northwest. And Jonathan, would you like to add something to this one?
Sure. The occasion at which he's speaking is the reopening of the Elwha River, the taking down of the Elwha dams, which were illegally built in the early 20th century and are no longer even needed for power production. But you'll notice the seal of the Department of Interior on the podium there. This is one of the first times that the federal government recognized the central role of Native people and their culture in actually guiding environmental policy. The tribes, the entire time this dam was in operation, the tribes were saying how badly this was messing up the environment for everyone involved, not just for them. But the leaders of Port Townsend just wanted to stick with their vision of development until finally it was no longer tenable. After a long struggle, the federal government finally came up with the money to buy off the whites, basically, and make it possible to take down the dams. They actually included in the bill a provision that they would never do this again. So anytime they want to do this again, they have to specifically say we're ignoring that decision. Anyway, but Billy Frank definitely was one of the key public figures in this struggle, so he totally deserved his place at the podium at this celebration.
Thank you, Jonathan. This is the Shall Know Solidarity Action in 2015, of which both Jonathan and myself were at this action. This is over in Seattle.
And in case you weren't there, this is a drilling rig that was supposed to help explore for oil in the Arctic Ocean. Terribly dangerous place. And among other things, when they finally got it out of the harbor after they'd gotten it all ready, it crashed into the shore. So clearly they were not up to the task. But there was a major campaign on the part of a lot of local activists who formed a group called the Kayaktivists, who went and tried to blockade it with their kayaks. And a number of us were involved in that action, as Ilani mentioned. So this is right here in the middle of Seattle. This drew a lot of headlines during the year 2015 and brought a lot of attention around the world to the problems of trying to drill for oil in the Arctic.
We also had some of the tribal canoes there too, a few of them.
Thank you. That's good. And we wanted to share this picture because Jonathan was actually in this picture. Behind that says "Use less oil." The tallest person in the very back is where Jonathan is. Do you want to say anything about this walk?
Yes, this walk was organized by the Protectors and Defenders of the Salish Sea to try to call attention to liquefied natural gas plant that's being built in Tacoma, right in the middle of the city, where it poses severe dangers to everybody there, and of course heavily impacts the Puyallup tribe whose land it is. This is a number of non-native supporters were organized by a native group to march from Seattle to Tacoma, to the site of this development, over about 3 days. I was actually there on the first and last day. This is marching down the interurban trail in the middle of Seattle, or sorry, the trail along Elliott Bay. And then a few years later, in 2019, we continued the walk from that same site all the way to Tacoma, to Olympia, sorry, to the state capitol in Olympia, where he held a ceremony trying to convince the governor to declare a climate emergency. He still hasn't done it, but he is trying, at least on climate, and we just wish he would actually declare it an emergency and take even stronger action. So this is all part of this long campaign led by Native people.
Thank you. And then this is a great photo of Derek and his son at he had his son speak at a gathering on talking about ending the usage of fossil fuels and saving Mother Earth. And so he started his son very young, and he's not 3 anymore. That's where he was 3, and his son is Tlingit of the Tlingit Nation. This is the youth climate strike in Whidbey Island in 2019. And there's Derek where it says social change, not climate change. He's holding that sign in the right, upper right-hand corner. Jonathan, would you like to talk about this one?
Sure. This is one of my favorite slides from Derek's program. This is the distribution of which tenth of the world's population in terms of wealth contributes the most to carbon dioxide emissions. It's pretty striking, isn't it? The poorest 50% have this minuscule amount, the richest 10% almost half.
And it's important to address oppression because it's integral to addressing climate crisis, because by the time people in power are impacted, it will be too late to make any changes. And so it's integral to work with people with firsthand experience who are marginalized from decision making. Systems of oppression require erasure of interconnectedness from knowing that our survival and health is interdependent. So what we're saying is we need to end the oppression. And then this lovely diagram, Jonathan will describe.
Okay. The extractive economy is what we have right now. It's a consumerist worldview with a colonialist mindset. Its purpose is to enclose wealth, that is to take wealth from the world and concentrate it in just a few people who we call in as shorthand Wall Street. Okay? Wall Street exercises power through this military symbolized by this tank here, and then distributes benefits to some of the people with cars and factories and so on. And this reinforces the worldview that keeps everyone trapped in the world of work, where they cannot imagine any other way to be. So we need to change the rules. We need to draw down money and power away from these international organizations through the nations and give them back to local control. Solutions that are visionary and oppositional stop the bad and build anew. And the tactics include divesting from their power with campaigns such as Masaza Talks, which tries to get banks to stop investing in fossil fuel projects, show people a values filter so they can start to think in terms of a just transition rather than being trapped in this work cycle, work and exploitation, and then invest in our power, bringing people into this circle of regenerative economy with a worldview of caring and sacredness, where our work uplifts people, regenerating resources, having deep democracy in our government, and giving people a much better sense of individual purpose in their lives, so that they will feel like their life means something rather than just being part of this cycle of being trapped.
Yes, that's wonderful. And that's part of the Just Transition framework. And climate action looks like a just transition for oil refinery workers, a credible plan to shut down all oil refineries by 2030.
Yes, and finding other employment for the people who work there. That's what the just transition means.
Now, the next presenter is Dina. She did her presentation on Indigenous environmental justice in September. She did a beautiful job of identifying the role of Indigenous knowledge in building a post-fossil fuel world. She is a professor at California State University in San Marcos. This is her book, As Long as Grass Grows. She addressed environmental injustice for American Indians is different from all other populations. It begins with invasion, genocide, and land theft. She talked about environmental justice theory, activism, law, policy, must recognize the history, and also acknowledge the political difference of American Indians as nations, not ethnic minorities. It's an excellent book. She addressed settler colonialism and manifest destiny. And that's what, in their minds, the colonists believed that we were inferior and legitimized the reason why they took our land.
Yes, this image dates from the 1840s. This is the ideal of liberty leading the people across the prairies. You can see the stagecoach, the train, and so on, the ox and the plow, driving away the natives. Doesn't say where they're going, and the buffalo too. Doesn't say where they're going, but it's saying that the whites are coming to take over. So this is called the spirit of manifest destiny.
Thank you. Oops. She addressed white supremacy in the environmental movement. And she shared information from New Pioneers information and talked about the second wave of environmentalism, cultural appropriation, and ongoing erasure. And her video is also on our website. She did a wonderful job. She addressed the fossil fuel production on Indian countries' Faustian bargain. The pros are money and sovereignty, cons are environmental destruction, and the man camps with missing and murdered Indigenous women. Jonathan, did you want to share anything about this slide?
Sure. A Faustian bargain, in case you haven't heard the term, derives from the German story about Faust, who made a bargain with the devil to gain riches in exchange for his soul. So when you talk about a Faustian bargain, it's when you give up something that's really precious to you to get something that may not be worth all that much. And definitely not worth the cost. So there are some tribes who have taken coal money, for example, because the coal company promises them jobs and also to respect their rights, which they don't always keep their promises. Sometimes they do. But the cons are environmental destruction, and especially the kind of environmental destruction that takes away tribes' subsistence methods, fishing, gathering, traditional agriculture, because instead people are expected to live in these barracks, okay, and assimilate, become like the white people, even though they're still on the reservation. Okay, the man camps in particular are where the miners come and live in these men-only environments, where they will seduce, trick, and kidnap young native women and cause them either to die or to go missing. It's a horrendous problem in Indian country, and a whole movement has grown up in the last few years called Missing, Murdered, and Murdered Indigenous Women, now Indigenous People, because men are also being recognized as victims. And our state government actually is one of the ones that's been leading in an effort to, leading governments in an effort to identify and deal with this problem.
Thank you, Jonathan. She also talked about the original instructions, the Indigenous knowledge, which is known as IK, and that it contains all the information that we need to live in right relationship with Mother Earth. She talked about decolonizing environmental justice, or EJ, activism, theory, law, and policy, and must recognize the U.S. history and ongoing structure of colonialism. Recognize Indigenous people's different relationship to the land, And she addressed the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the right to free, prior, and informed consent, not just consultation.
And this is a very current issue right now. You heard about Standing Rock and the Dakota Access Pipeline struggle, which was initially won and then lost and now maybe won again. But similar struggles are going on all over the place right now. There are people out on the road right now at a place called Line 3 in upstate Minnesota. You can check it out on Facebook. This problem is not going away, and it's not going to be solved by media attention either. It's going to be people coming together and saying we all need to defend the sacred, not just the immediate people who are there.
I want to just say something real quick about Standing Rock, that it was a really outstanding opportunity for people of different backgrounds to come together on a common cause. There was a clear, concrete goal to stop the pipeline, and non-Indian environmentalists and climate activists got involved, also with a lot of Native people. And of course, there was people from all over the world who were camping out there, and I think it was very successful in doing many things.
Thank you. And then this is Dina's contact information, her Gmail and her website, her Facebook and Twitter. This, now we're going to move on to just a really brief overview of part of the workshops that I give on building bridges between cultures, which is I model it based on the audience too. It is modularized so that I add or remove certain items based on the audience. I go through, this is just one page of definitions. There are several pages I have where I, so that everyone in the audience knows, is on the same page about the definitions of racism, privilege, and equity and equality, and the differences. This is a brief overview of the cycle of systematic oppression. It gives you and shows you the power, control, and economics, and how that is perpetuated by the dominant culture, and how it's perpetuated by institutions and supported by and enforced by institutions. It also has a severe impact on and creates internalized dominance, feeling superior, and internalized oppression, and believing the misinformation about your own group. And then how the target groups are mistreated, and how the cycle is perpetuated over and over again. I do address a little bit about the impact of COVID-19. At the particular time that I created this particular slide, the Navajo Nation was at the highest infection rate in the country, greater than that worst hit state of New York, and even greater than that of Wuhan at the height of the outbreak in China. And what's sad about that is the Native people only make up 1/10 of New Mexico's population, but represent more than 55% of the coronavirus cases. And in Wyoming, American Indian Alaska Native people are less than 3% of the state population, but make up more than 1/3 of its cases at that time. So you can see the impact of how everything's connected. This shows you the map of the Navajo Nation and their different areas and how many cases are in their different regions. And they continuously update this every week. This is just from when I did the presentation. This shows you the root causes of health inequities and how the social inequities are tied together, which includes, the fossil fuel industry, air quality, neighborhood conditions, access to healthcare or lack thereof, and how they're all interconnected. This is just a brief overview. I go quite a bit in depth with these different American Indian historical timelines. This is directly from The Rights of Indians and Tribes by Stephen Pavar on federal Indian policy. And so I go from 1492 all the way through to the present time with the various agreements, policies, and laws, and how these impact not only Native American, Alaska Native people, but everyone. Because if one person is hurting or not healthy, it affects everybody, just like the COVID-19. This is just one of the maps that I use that shows the, when it's activated, it shows the invasion of our land of it from 1776. And when it's activated, it shows how the land, it goes across the United States, and it shows how the land grab. This is the from the Governor's Office of Indian Affairs. This is the state of Washington, the 29 federally recognized tribes. As you notice, it does not list any of the non-federally recognized tribes on the map. There are 8 treaties. This is a list of the treaties. I do go over those briefly in the presentation. That picture on the right is actually from the canoe journey. And the source is from Governor's Office of Indian Affairs. I give a brief outline on the Indigenous values versus European values, and just a couple of important points is that we focus on our group as a community as opposed to as an individual. We are all related. Everyone is a relationship to us. The plants, the animals, and we're not, and the European see plants and animals as not, as just resources and not human. We only take what we need and give away. And so the more we give away, the richer we are in our culture. And it's the opposite in the European value, is accumulation of wealth. One of our colleagues, one of our board members, did a wonderful job of doing research on oil spills in Washington state. This is just a sampling of the work that's been done, and it should be on our website under our resources tab. This shows you the oil spill of 2019, Puget Sound Refinery in Anacortes near the Swinomish Reservation. And in 2013 and 2015, the Shell Puget Sound release of toxins near Swinomish Reservation as well. They were only fined at $77,000 is all by the Washington Department of Labor and Industries. And then there's the resources there, the citing of resources. Oh, there's other oil spills, but we, want to just show you a sample. And then Jonathan, you want to talk about the slide?
Yes, I used to teach environmental science, so I love this kind of illustration. This is talking about oil spills. And so we like to show this to show people that even though we don't seem to have too much of a problem with oil spills around us, in other parts of the world it's a huge problem. You can see this is the Gulf Coast here. It's huge circles showing very large numbers and amounts of oil being spilled. The map on the right is a projection of what would happen if there was an oil, if one of the oil tankers going through the Strait of Juan de Fuca were to have a major spill in the area where it's most likely to occur, right off Victoria. You can see the darker and lighter areas where the oil will be concentrated, but just look how widely that oil plume spreads all the way around through that huge area. And the area around Whidbey Island, they're not sure what would happen on the other side of it. It would depend on wind and currents, but the seaward side would definitely be heavily hit.
Thank you, Jonathan. And the direct impact is, of course, the oil spill toxins in the water, killing the fish of which we eat, and killing plants and other animals, and a real devastating impact. And then this just shows you how to be an ally to Indigenous people, respect and support Indigenous sovereignty, learn about treaties. And actually, treaties are the supreme law of the land. As part of, they are part of the article and U.S. Constitution. Consider future generations, 7 generations from now. Question and resist stereotypes. Learn it and more, and reject the doctrine of discovery. Work to end global warming. Support renewable energy. Stop hydrofracking, dirty coal, uranium mining, and not co-opting native culture or ceremonies. And then how to return, it's important to return sacred objects. And Jeff helped create a document and a whole team. He put together a whole team of people to work on the purchasing only authentic Native American art and products. And we recommend that you read and promote the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. We celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day on October 12th, and whatever Monday that happens to be each year. And read Native authors, support Native crafts, people, businesses, and events. And that is my traditional button blanket on the lower right-hand corner. And then one of the exercises that we do after the presentation is we do give out the Ally Bill of Responsibilities and then do breakout sessions with these 3 questions that we ask them to respond to. And it's the idea is for them to do some self-reflection and talk out loud about what their challenges are personally and professionally, and have some good dialogue about how they can implement and maybe where they need more information and or training. And then this is where I do the Q&A. I also have a long list of resources that are part of my presentation as well.
And if I can just say about this photo, there's Ilani on the right, and that's me on the far left. We are at the Paddle to Alcatraz celebration in the fall of 2019 in San Francisco, where a number of canoes from our area traveled down there to help commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Alcatraz occupation.
And then the wonderful young lady to my right is Judy DeBarros. And she's a wonderful ally and advocate of Indigenous people and also Spanish people. She knows how to translate for people who speak Spanish. And there's Rosie to Jonathan's left, Rosie. So at this point, Jonathan, do you want to share your slides?
Sure. I just have a couple things.
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to take that down and put up. Let's see, where's my trigger? Right, here we go. Okay, I just want to give people an idea of the money involved in running the Nakani program. Most of our money, as you'll see on this statement here, let me make it a little bigger. There. Most of our money comes from what are called direct public grants. These are foundations that give us money to do specific things. In this case, a lot of our money comes from a program called Healthier Here, because a lot of the work that we do actually ends up improving health outcomes for people in Indian country. And we're also collaborating with something called the Medicaid Transformation Project, which is helping improve how health is delivered to Native people. We got about $4,700 in contributions from the public, mostly individuals. We got $62,500 in contracts for services that we did. Those are mostly presentations. And then $5,000 in program income. That was similarly for presentations that we did. So our overall budget on incoming money was just under $276,000. We spent that. We gave a little money. We gave a little money out to other organizations, but a lot of it went to contractors. Those are the people who did the presentations that Ilani excerpted for us. Hi, Jonas.
Hi.
Those are those contract services right there.
Here's the budget.
And
Okay,
so
they're
on.
first.
Program operations, a lot of this was our emergency feeding program. Ilani mentioned the huge amounts of food we were able to deliver to urban natives, some huge number of tons of it. And we also provided some rent assistance for people, for urban natives who were in danger of being evicted. So that's about 95,000 or so. And then our administration is only about 12,000.
What?
Okay, and then this is our payroll, only about 60,000. So our expenses were almost 282,000. That's a deficit of about $6,000. Okay, so this is the amount. In order to balance our budget, we're going to need to raise a little bit more money from contributors. So you'll be hearing from us in the coming year. Please contribute as individual members so we're not as dependent on these big foundations.
Thank you, Jonathan. And also, I just want to reiterate that because we received a grant from Stand Up to Oil, that's how we were able to do the events that we did with the presentations that I just reviewed with you. And I hope that you go to our webpage and there's a donation button there. And we are also the presentations, the live presentations are on the webpage, and Jonathan is sharing that. And whoever's not speaking, can you go ahead and mute yourself?
Okay.
Here's go ahead.
So this is our web page, has different sections. I'm just scrolling down so you can see where the donation button is. Where is it? So way at the bottom, of course. There we go, the donate button, way down here. Okay, we got the seal of transparency from GuideStar. But also on our page, we have these links at the top. We have events. We have some information about us. This is how you can support us, and this lists some of our partners, how to contact us, and then there's this big resources section. The part I really want to show is the videos. So I'm going down here to the videos and click on that. And it will load. Here they are. So the Canoe Journey Safety, this was made when our program was part of the American Friends Service Committee. Jeff made this as part of that program. But the rest of these are presentations that we did. And Ilani excerpted for you. This is Lindsay Crowfoot's one that she excerpted first. It's not called Winter Villages. It is called Traditional Foods and Medicines. We had another presentation on traditional foods and medicines by Valerie Segrest, who is one of the world's experts on this topic in the Pacific Northwest. This is Derek Hoshiko's presentation. He's not native, but he does have very strong native connections and is extremely knowledgeable, as you saw from his slides, about the impact of oil on our world. We did mention the loving kindness meditation that we do every week. This is the sample of that with our leader, Vishaka Smith. Another traditional foods presentation with Hillel Echohawk, who's a local chef, specializing in native foods. And another one with Solana Booth, it's more traditional medicines. And then here is Dina Julia Whitaker's presentation You can see the whole thing here, including all the points that she made. And when we are done with this webinar, we will we'll save it, I'll edit it, and then it will also appear on the same page. So you will be able to go back and review this if you would like to see it again. That's what I was going to share.
Great. And so with that, we have about 20 minutes or so. If anyone had any questions, feel free to ask them now.
Yeah, how did you recruit such a good-looking audience anyways?
We posted our announcement on Facebook, and also Jonathan and I worked really hard identifying good presenters in a variety of areas and expertise, and areas that we thought would be interesting for people, and also would be important to show the interconnection and all the intersections of water and oil spills and health and traditional foods and history and culture, and how they all intersect and how they're all interrelated.
Also, I just wanted, oh, go ahead, Vicki. I'm
Hi,
sorry.
Vicki. Go ahead, Vicki.
I've been working in Kenmore, where I live, on environmental issues and just a lot of issues. And one of the city council members said that Kenmore works with 3 different tribes, and because of the river, the Sammamish River runs right by Kenmore. And she mentioned the Duwamish, which surprised me because I know they don't have federal recognition, but do they have state and local recognition?
Not as such.
What?
Not really.
No, not officially. They don't have those recognition. You sure she wasn't talking about the Suquamish?
She might have got it wrong.
Yeah.
'Cause the Suquamish might have, I know they have fishing rights down at the mouth of the ship canal. So it probably goes up the way. So I suppose it's could be Tulalip, maybe Snoqualmie, probably
Snoqualmie.
Muckleshoot.
Yeah, Snoqualmie, Muckleshoot. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
That being said, the Duwamish do have a lot of popular support, that is support from individuals in the city of Seattle. They've done a masterful job of setting up a longhouse and museum that lays out their case very strongly. And a lot of people responded. I think they're up to 10,000 supporters now of the Real Rent Fund, which basically gives people a chance to contribute directly to the welfare of the tribes if they're not getting any federal money at all.
Well, do they think with the new administration, they might get a recognition?
You know, that is, I'm glad you asked that. That is one of their plans, is to try, you know, they did have federal recognition for a short time. And I used to work for them as a planner and help them raise 1.5 million to build the longhouse. And so, you know, for a capital campaign. And I do know that they are going to go forward with trying to get their federal recognition again. So it's been a real struggle, but as you know, it's very political. So, yeah.
And I wanted to take an opportunity to welcome some people that I worked with for a long time. I used to work at American Friends Service Committee as the Indian Program Director. So Jonas Davis, and used to work with American Friends Service Committee for like 30 years. And so she was a great friend and helped me to learn a lot of good stuff when I was there. And then Sonia Tuma is the director of the West region of American Friends Service Committee. And so I said in the notes, she was my last boss there, and maybe the last official boss I'll ever have in my short lifetime. So, and then American Friends Service Committee was gave us a generous start for our organization back in 2017. So we thank them for that. And so I worked there for 25 years. So then they just got sick of me, I guess. I don't know.
One thing I did want to mention is because of COVID-19, we had to totally redesign. Had to totally redesign the workshop. We had to totally redesign our ideas. We originally were going to do all of our presentations in person, provide some fresh, healthy food and that kind of thing, and have the presentations at different locations. We originally had met with a wonderful staff at the Department of Parks and Recreation. And we started strategizing with her back in December of 2019. And then when COVID hit, we even had a presentation planned in, I think it was February, March, and that got canceled. And then every single event we were going to attend and give a presentation, for other events, like at the canoe journey, we were going to give a brief presentation, at the event that is now held at the Seattle Center, which Jeff's been on that board, planning the native gathering there. Yeah, festival. There's a native gathering as part of the Folklife Festival. We were going to do something there. We were going to do something with the U of W in May. Do you remember the name of that? That's a 2-day gathering at the Wetlabolt. Yeah, Wetlabolt Longhouse.
Yeah, this is a food sovereignty conference.
Right. And with Indigenous people, actually it's become quite international. It's a wonderful gathering. So everything got canceled. And so we had to do everything virtual. So we became instant Zoom experts. So we're so thankful that you're here, and I hope this was of value to you. And let us know if there's questions that you have in the future, or if you'd like to participate with us in some capacity. We'd love to hear from you. And please take a look at our website. Jeff, looks like you're about ready to say something.
Yeah. So I was going to ask Jonathan, our treasurer, do we take checks also besides taking donations on the webpage?
Yes, we do take checks as well. I'm actually going to put the address in the chat right now.
And then did we want people to, I don't know, did we ask them to sign their name and maybe put their email if they'd like on our chat line so we can remember that you were with us?
That would be great. Thank you so much.
I'll take a picture of the page, of the screen here, so you'll get to see who's here.
All right.
Oh, yes, thank you, Joyce.
Okay. I can send that to Jeff. And I have to apologize for being late to this Zoom meeting. We had the misimpression that this meeting was going to be on Facebook Live. So we were there kind of checking in every now and then.
Oh, yeah,
and we thought, oh, well, the meeting is late. Unfortunately, I sent Jeff an email and he sent me the Zoom link.
Oh, okay. So a couple people. Okay, so yeah. So luckily this has been recorded, and Jonathan's going to be editing it and then putting it on our web page, right?
Right.
Good. That'll be helpful because we really wanted to hear it.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. There's a word in Tlingit that says "gonishjish," and so we want to say "gonishjish." Thank you so much for attending, and we're so honored that you're here today, this evening.
And we're so happy that you're carrying on.
Yes, so are we.
So,
Yeah, thanks.
okay, bye, everybody.
Bye, and so good to see you, Sonia.
Great to see you too. Thanks so much for the update, Elaine and Jeff and Jonathan. It was really great to hear what you guys have been doing.
Good to see you, Sonia.
Take care, everybody.
All right,
Bye.
good night.